Welcome to KRQE's New Mexico News Insiders, 2025 Regional Edward R. Murrow Award winner for Best Podcast. Here's Gabrielle Burkhart and Chris McKee. Sponsored by New Mexico PBS.
Gabby, one of the biggest misconceptions I think I had moving to New Mexico, this was back in 2013. I mentioned we're newsroom senior citizens, so it was a while ago.
You're going to keep calling us senior citizens.
But really, like, a misconception I had was about the weather, particularly what happens in the spring and summer here in New Mexico. I'm from Oregon, and the perception I had of New Mexico before I got here is basically it was hot and dry. And I think there's a general assumption, maybe from me at the time and some of my fellow Oregonians, that New Mexico's weather was kind of like the face-melting hot stuff that they have in Phoenix. Not the whole story at all, by any means, though.
Yeah, I remember the first year I moved to Roswell from Texas. I had an umbrella and a raincoat in my car, like in my work car, ready in case it rained. I never used it for the first entire year that I lived in New Mexico.
Yeah.
So to be fair, we do get a lot of sunshine, but we've lived here for a while now, and we can definitely see how quickly that when we do get rain, it's a big difference maker in just how much can accumulate on the ground all at once during a rainstorm. If you're in Albuquerque, you see these massive man-made concrete-lined arroyos start running in a rainstorm. And we're talking a lot of water all at once, tens of thousands of cubic feet per second, for those who know how to measure water, enough to move cars, lift concrete, and the flowing water just packs enough power to even carry people away.
Yeah, and we see it every season here in Albuquerque when a storm hits. We also see these special teams, the people who are trained to rescue people caught in the arroyos and fast-moving water. And we're talking to some of the folks involved in that work today and some of those missions, that being with Albuquerque Fire Rescue. Joining us here today is Lieutenant Jason Fair, who's a firefighter, paramedic, and spokesman for Albuquerque Fire Rescue, and also Lieutenant Justin Spain, AFR's Technical Rescue Program Coordinator. Thank you both for joining us.
Can I make a quick correction?
Yes.
Yeah.
I am not a paramedic. Lieutenant Spain here is, though.
Okay. Well, my apologies. A firefighter, but then also as well, we talked to you quite a bit about.
We talked to you about all of
the
it.
work that we do. We see y'all do for AFR. So yeah.
Yeah. Just to start off, let's start with you, Lieutenant. How did you get into AFR, and was Arroyo or Swiftwater Rescue, even in the cards of you thinking like, oh, I want to learn that?
So I was actually a Kirtland firefighter, so I was at Kirtland Air Force Base for 5 years. There was a lateral class in 2007, so I came over as a member of the 73rd Cadet class. So, I always knew of the flood channel rescue, and that's because, unlike the two of you, being from here, I was always aware that Albuquerque Fire responded to the arroyos and would perform rescues when needed during the monsoon season.
Okay. And what about you? What brought you into AFR? Was water rescue something that you knew you'd be doing?
It was most definitely on the docket. And so just one was looking for a job, and Albuquerque was one of the first places to call back. And then right away from the academy, tried to get into the technical rescue side of everything, which includes the flood channels and swift water and all the other technical rescue aspects of it.
What drew you to be interested in that?
Into that area? Climbing, being in the outdoors, and then just the rope rescue, and then enjoy the problem solving when people do need it. It takes you to some unique places.
Interesting. Yeah. So this topic, I thought it would be interesting. Chris and I were talking about, topics on the podcast. We see these rescues obviously every year. It's a constant story that we report on in the news about these arroyo rescues specifically. And I'm always more curious about the context of these missions. So let's start high level. How do you guys describe the work for those who are unfamiliar, and how dangerous is a water rescue? Is it exciting? Is it terrifying?
You want to start that one off?
Sure. It's most definitely exciting being down next to that water that's moving at 10 to 30 miles per hour, ripping right past you. It's one of those, we call it a flood channel because its tactics are a little bit different. All the water is different across common things across the water, but flood channel is very different. We actually tie folks off compared to swift water, which is more like the rivers or places like that. So we're unique. Us, Phoenix, LA, some of the Front Range up in Colorado have these large concrete infrastructures, and that has resulted in very fast-moving water from the underground shedding off the city, especially as Albuquerque has grown over the years, giving us a lot more water in there.
So, and like Lieutenant said, I'm from here and grew up in the foothills, actually right near the head of the Embudo Channel. And this was before your all time, but there was a big storm here in 1988 where they reported 7 inches of rain in the matter of an hour or two, and there was massive flooding. It actually filled up the entire Embudo Arroyo with sediment and dirt, and it ran over Wantabo. There's actually a fatality there.
I've seen footage from this one because
yes.
I had to do a flooding story, and I pulled footage. It was wild to watch.
So it was a 16-year-old girl. I was 10 years old at the time. Alicia Kopczynski was her name, and her car actually got washed off the road at Monte Largo. Found the car at Chelwood, and then her body was found at Wantabo. So from just being a very young kid and actually growing up right at the on that flood channel and seeing, the amount of water that it collected, it's something I was always, like LT here said, it's kind of fascinating. And I think that's also, one of the most dangerous parts about it is it goes from, dry to deadly in minutes. And the amount of water that those things collect in such a short time is amazing to watch.
Yeah, and it's truly remarkable. I mean, seeing even some of the video, you sent us a few of the clips, when you see these arroyos running, just the water bouncing off of, when it's a lot of water, bouncing off of the support beams for some of the overpasses over the interstate. It goes to show you just how much and how powerful that water is. When these arroyos do start running, what's the process of getting AFR's swiftwater rescue or arroyo rescue teams out into the places they need to go? Do you always have the same number of people go to the same places? Do you wait for them, or do you wait for a call to come in? What's the process? You see the storm coming down and just say, everybody go to your stations?
So generally the process starts in the alarm room, and it's usually when the National Weather Service will make an alert, whether for a flood warning or a watch, and that triggers the alarm room to notify the crews and the stations that are involved in flood channel rescue. And so Justin can probably mention more about the stations that are involved or some of the locations that we go to, but yes, there's designated places. So when that alert goes out, all the crews know to go out, and we're always ready for these responses, regardless of whether an alert comes in or not. We're still going to respond, and when we go to our locations. But when that alert comes in, it just kind of lets the crews know not just to be ready for something, but to expect it. So it just kind of changes your thought process a little bit. So everyone's ready to go. Double check your gear, review any sort of guidelines that we need that we might be rusty on. This all starts at the academy. Every cadet that comes through the academy will get trained on this, and then that training continues for all the people that are assigned to any of those stations throughout their whole career.
Yeah, and every April usually we start and we do 3 shifts. We have 3 shifts, and so we do a large operational exercise with each shift, and we go through and deploy everyone to their spots, go over their anchors, make sure nothing's damaged, and they go through the whole iterations prior to this season usually starting. And yeah, there's about, I think there's 9 divisions that go in along the Arroyo. We've taken the time with the water folks to figure out exactly kind of where are the bottlenecks that we can go to, where we can be ready to go. Because what we find is crews used to go to where they were last seen. Well, by the time they got there, they weren't there anymore. So we pre-stage everyone ready at water's edge to catch them when that first opportunity arises, depending on what part of the system they ended up entering in or which side of the system they came in on.
Wow. We've already seen some of the consequences of arroyos running this season. On June 2nd, a body was recovered from an arroyo after a rainstorm. You've both been involved in rescues before. Can you tell us about some of the recent rescues you've been involved in? And I'm curious too, why are people in arroyos in the first place?
So it's a complex question, but yeah, I'll start with the first part of it. On the recent one in June, I kind of ran the whole flood channel that day. I was up in Fort Hills and I watched that storm come in. Mm-hmm. And so the box is a different one of our locations. And instead of that drainage flowing into the Embudo and the North Diversion Channel, that one actually flows out into the Terrace Arroyo. So it's a engineered channel and then drains off into a natural arroyo. But so watching that come in, they had the report of the person in the water. And as LT said here, when you get the report of person in the water, they'll dispatch everybody. Someone goes to their locations. And the most east one is the box. So it's up there at Fort Hills Road in the Terrace Arroyo. And by the time I got to there, it was already running. And crews from Station 12 and Station 8 were showing up, and then they started reporting sights of somebody in the water farther down. So I started heading down, and kind of those reports keep coming in, and ultimately I ended up out at Roy Road for what was ultimately the recovery.
Mm. Can you tell us why are people in arroyos usually? Like, what's the story behind that?
We've had many stories over the years, everywhere from them living underneath the city to kids being interested in falling into it, to skateboarders, to folks just trying to wade across it. So there's been a large variety of folks and reasons why they go in there, and we find them in there every year. I think it was one year, many years ago, the Water Authority had their folks working down there, pulled everyone out in time, and lost 2 or 3 work trucks into the Arroyo system but they were able to get them out in time. So whether they're working in there or whatever, but there's a lot of reasons people go in the arroyos to cross them. Some live in them, some folks play in them. And then when these things run, it attracts folks. So
Yeah, they wanna
everyone's
watch,
out there watching. It's an impressive sight to see.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all the above. There's every year these flood channels prove to be deadly, but there's a multitude of reasons why people are in them, around them, and get caught up in them.
We'll be right back with more of the New Mexico News Insiders.
Hi, I'm Logan Rader, host of New Mexico Living. New Mexico News Insiders is sponsored by New Mexico PBS.
If you like New Mexico News Insiders, learn more about New Mexico in Focus, a weekly hour-long show analyzing decisions impacting New Mexico statewide. Stream it anytime, anywhere. Visit nmpbs.org and follow them on all social media platforms.
Now back to New Mexico News Insiders.
How many times have crews been deployed? I don't know if you have that number off the top of your head here, but it seems like at least a handful of times just even this year.
So I think we've only had 2 so far this year. I'd sent you all some numbers. I think we're above 30 in 2024,
Yeah.
and then they kind of tapered off. And there's a couple different reasons for that. The 72 coding that we use for dispatch covers all kinds of water rescues. So we'll get dispatched for the flood channel, or in recent years when we've had really decent runoff in the river, that'll cover our river rescues too. So we have not had the runoff this year. So we haven't seen, this is kind of prime time, or would be, for those types of responses. So that's why this year we're actually probably down a little bit compared to what we saw in 2024 and 23.
And are you talking about snow melt from the mountains?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That usually happens around spring.
And we didn't see a big spike in the river this year, where we're, all the way back to 2021. We've had probably 2 to 3 good years of really good runoff.
Wow.
We didn't have that this year.
From your perspective, I know you came in from a climbing background and more interested in the technical part. What does it take to train for these types of situations? Do you all train in active waters?
So we'll start with what Jason started, the cadet program. So I get them for some time during their cadet program, and they learn about how to be around water, general safety, and then we give them a very detailed on how to work in the arroyo or the flood channel system here in Albuquerque. And so we get those cadets from the beginning, and then every year everyone gets exposed to it again, and we refresh on that skill set. And it's got a lot of technical aspects to it, and big thing is if we don't tie people up when they go next to water, but with our flood channel system, we have to put them on a climbing style belay so that they can safely operate at that water's edge and get everyone. Because it's a lot of work to get there, and then you have to get them up the side and make sure they don't fall back in. So they're working very hard with that.
Where do you all train?
We will train in the dry arroyos there, and then we will use some of the Rio Grande or the drainage ditches for our swift water folks to be able to train in that live water there.
Okay. In some ways, we know that these waters are just very difficult. Obviously, you're seeing how fast moving they are. You're seeing how wide they are. If you can just, though, give us an idea, how challenging is a rescue to actually make in one of these flood channels?
So LT mentioned earlier, we have designated locations that we go to. And so even at one of those spots where we have anchors in place that we've trained at before, it's still very challenging. I'd sent you video of one that we made in 2019, and the part that made that one probably successful is that we had crews farther up the channel at Morningside who actually saw the person go into water and reported them. So now we're not relying on somebody that called 911 or somebody that might have reported it. We have a firefighter on the radio that says there's somebody in the water, they're coming your way. So we had a lookout farther up, and they start reporting that they see somebody in the water. So we're set up with our anchors, we're getting ready to receive this person. And so that's seeing them as the first part of the challenge. And then how do we get that person back to the shore? And so we deploy rope bags. So we throw a bag, and there's usually 2 to 3, depending on the location, that we're going to try to get that person in the water to receive this rope. So the first person in line made a nice throw, laid it right across that person's chest, who was able to kind of roll over. And they don't really pull themselves. It's just the action of getting anchored to the side. They pull them down, or it swings them over to the side, and then the next person receives them. So then, we've successfully got somebody to the side of the channel, but now how do we get them up and out of the water? So in that case, we try to stay out of the water. Somebody actually had to go into the water a little bit to actually secure that person and pull them out. So, I mean, it's navigating a bunch of challenges, managing risk. They're super, what would you call these? I mean, so probably 60 of them in the past 3 years. It's still when we do 100,000 calls a year, it's this, as much as you see them, they're still a relatively low frequency kind of high acuity event. So yeah, I mean, there's a multitude of challenges, and sometimes you're in the rain and on the side of a very steep arroyo. So I mean, the odds are stacked against you, but over the years we've proved to be very successful in these operations. And unfortunately, we can't get them all. But if we're in the right place, we have all the resources and the training to make effective rescues.
Yeah. Anything you can add to that?
Yeah, it's physically demanding on the side of those arroyos. They're playing a game of tug of war once they get the person in there. And what we find is folks, they've been fighting for their lives in the arroyo, literally fighting for their lives as they come down. Once we get them to the side, they're like, oh, thank goodness you're here. And they just kind of go exhausted. So we now have to have special systems to bring them up to the top. And then usually they have trauma to them, or will end up with infection over there because of all the water where it came from in the cities. And so we have all that medical treatment that they have to start right away at the top side. So it brings in all the aspects of our rescue and medical services into one to get that working and get them out of there.
Wow. And I imagine, like you said, lookouts at the top end, you have like maybe seconds to make that throw and have it be successful.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, there's a lot on the line, and so in that case, it was firefighter Matt Trujillo. I mean, still when I saw him make that throw and laid it, perfectly across there, because even when we're in training, it's challenging in a dry arroyo to make those throws and have them be accurate to where somebody can actually retrieve that rope. So yeah, and then you throw all those other conditions at it, and it was amazing to watch. I get goosebumps now just thinking about it, and you're like, yeah, we got one.
Wow. Well, your work also extends into our natural waterways as well, including the Rio Grande, and more people get on the water each summer. While the river has been pretty low in the spring, monsoons can obviously surge that flow pretty quickly. What's the difference maker between like an arroyo rescue versus a river rescue?
We have 2 operating guidelines that separate those, because even though some of the tactics look the same, the PFDs look the same, and the rope bags look the same, we don't enter the flood channel. As you know, as firefighters, we go silly places sometimes, burning buildings, little things like that, hang from ropes, all that silly stuff. This water is so fast, and there's so much debris into it that's moving with it. It is unsafe for us to enter. It's unsafe for anyone to be in there. So we set up those systems to pull them from there. Where in the river, the waters, let's say, could be 5 to 10 times slower than what the arroyo reaches, even though the water guys have put in as many things they can do to slow it down. And that difference in waterway, the debris that's associated with it, and the hydraulics, the way the water moves underneath there, these people are going to be in the middle, stuck every time. In the river, we can use that to our advantage. So we don't enter the arroyo rescues because it is not the safe place to be, and we want to get them out of there as soon as possible. Rivers, we'll absolutely get the boats out there. We'll jump in the water if we have to. But we have a line of tactics for this, and it is called, we want to reach, throw, row, then go. So ideally, we're going to reach out to you and grab you if we can. That works out pretty well. Not well in the flood channels because it pushes you towards the middle. We can't reach them. So then we throw. We throw that rope bag to you like a football. Then we can anchor and bring you in. And then row, which we don't do in the flood channels. We'll put a boat in there. And lastly, we'll get this guy suited up in his gear, and he'll jump in there and go grab you and then swim you back to shore. So,
okay.
How is AFR equipped to handle river rescues? I understand, if I'm correct here, for the first time, AFR now has a boathouse somewhere closer to the river, or maybe right on the river there, that you're going to be working out of, or maybe dispatching out of. I don't know entirely how that's going to work, but how does that differ from maybe the past and other ways that you would dispatch to the river?
Well, I'll start this off and let Lieutenant Spain take over on it. But yeah, the HCR program was kind of born out of Station 3. So that's the university station up at Central and Girard. That's where the squad was initially placed. That's our heavy technical rescue truck. Years back, we moved that to Station 4. So that's the Coronado Park, or right there at 4th in the interstate, for a little bit better access citywide. And when they moved there, what year did we get the boat?
It's 5 years old now, so I think that was 2019, 2020, somewhere right around
So the boat used to be staged out of there, and then recently we got this boathouse, so we're keeping our airboat there as well as APD. And so Lieutenant can probably speak a little bit more to the improvement, or just a little bit better access instead of having to get to the station and then deploying the airboat and going to launch at Tingley. It's a little bit more better suited and a better suited location for launching.
Yeah, it's just down the road from here, straight shot down Tingley Road to a great launch site that we can get to. Having that joint operations with APD allows us to have different style boats in there. So depending on what the river flow is, we can deploy an airboat or a Zodiac with a different type of motor on it, or something that we just paddle onto the river with. And also we found we don't need everyone going there. Majority of folks need to go out to the river or to the Arroyo and do their work there. And so they're ready at that boathouse. Some things we did to stack the odds in our favor is there is a marked unit with lights and sirens attached to the boat during the prime season. So if you were to call in, it is ready. They get there, they hop in, they drive it out there and get it ready to rock and roll. So that strategic location that we're able to work with Biopark and APD and everyone to get that has been a huge help, having it in the right spot.
And it also just kind of a function of it actually being really successful over the past few years. It kind of like you were talking about, why would Albuquerque Fire Rescue need an airboat? And it's just for that the times of years, and it's actually we've deployed in the winter time as well, when there's been reports. So it's been a successful program, and yeah, it's successful enough that it earned its own place to stay.
I'll be the first to admit, Jason, I was a little skeptical on like an airboat on this river, and then finally once we got on there, it goes over the mud, it goes through the bushes, it just needs a centimeter or two of water, if that, to move around, or it can handle it when it's at the full flow.
Yeah.
So when we have folks down there stuck in the mud, we can go and just park right next to them, and we have a stable working platform.
Yeah.
We can run back and forth. As Letta's called us down up to there. And so,
Interesting.
I'm
I'm envisioning like a hoverboard of boats kind of thing, the way you're describing it. But it sounds like 2024 was also a real significant year with 32 dispatches for water and swiftwater rescue recovery missions. That's more than half of what's charted total since 2022. Why is that? Any stories that you can share that can maybe highlight why there were so many rescue efforts last year?
Well, I hit on it a little bit earlier. A lot of it did have to do with river runoff and actually river rescues, but we had several significant storms last year too that some of those were, we get these dispatches and there might be reports of several people in the water. So, each one of those events might have 3 events within it, or even 4, depending on, as Lieutenant mentioned earlier, there was I can't remember the year, but there was people working in the Arroyo. A kid ended up falling into that one. So each of these events has the potential to escalate exponentially. So I think it's also just a product of us being able to take more of these responses. And so, 5 years ago, we weren't putting the airboat on the river as much as we were. And so it's just something that's increased. We're getting better at doing it. So those numbers just kind of are dictated by the weather that we receive. So
probably a small public service announcement on that one. It's something that we've seen. I don't remember it very well last year. We paid attention to a lot of these storms, but if it forms in the east side of Albuquerque, we're like, oh, this is a guaranteed day in the Arroyo, because it builds off the mountain, but it's beautiful and sunny for the majority of the city, and all the openings of the arroyos point that direction. So most people get their sun, but it is pouring inches of rain up in the foothills. And when those happen, everyone kind of gets fooled a little bit by sunshine with the water rushing across the city, because we'll be standing in sunny skies down at Manal or I-25, but it's pouring rain at Tramway. That all filters down and across. And so the city has done some committees and things together to try to figure out warning systems, advisories, getting folks out to common areas where people enter across that to help mitigate, especially on those east storm days.
We'll be right back with more on New Mexico News Insiders.
Hi, I'm Monica Wicki, host of New Mexico Living. This episode of New Mexico News Insiders is sponsored by New Mexico PBS. If you enjoy New Mexico News Insiders, check out New Mexico in Focus, a great source for insights about what's happening in our state. Catch their podcasts and videos at nmpbs.org or stream it anytime, anywhere on the free PBS app. Now, let's continue to New Mexico News Insiders.
I was going to ask a little bit about that. You know, part of the story here, no matter the year, it's the public awareness campaigns, that are also a part of the conversation. But even with all of that, it seems there is always a story of somebody getting caught in the floodwaters. We talked a little bit about there are plenty of different stories about why people are in the waters, but I guess another thing to keep in mind is that driving through floodwaters can be really dangerous. Thinking about Central and First Street, there's the underpass down there that I know I've been out there before and seen that whole thing fill up and see cars still try to drive under it. That happened 10 years ago. I remember seeing that firsthand.
Your video was crazy that night.
It's wild. Yeah, someone tried to drive a Lamborghini, I think, under the flooded Central Underpass. But yeah, fun times. But obviously there are people though who do get caught up in this. Why? I guess is it an education thing? Is it people just know the risks they're taking, just assumed that they're not going to get caught into it? I mean, do you have any insight as to why do we keep seeing this kind of stuff?
I think this is a great topic, and I was actually excited when you guys reached out about this because we can go back to the Ditches Are Deadly campaign that started in the early 80s. The elementary school that I went to, Collette Park, is up there off Manal and Morris. We used to walk across an arroyo to get to the playground. There's actually an arroyo that splits the campus there, and I think it was my kindergarten, might have been first grade year. They built a bridge so the kids didn't have to walk through the arroyo to get to the playground. Right. So and growing up here, it's always been something that we're dealing with. And he mentioned skateboarders. The Embudo Arroyo is world famous for how long it is and how smooth it is, and people come here from all over the world to ride. There is a population of people that experience homelessness that are seeking shelter in the ditches and arroyos and tunnels. And the other part of it is just, he just alluded to this, is how quickly these storms can come on and how fast those arroyos fill up and sweep people away. So it's just a combination of all those factors. I mean, we're at 6,700 feet in the foothills and, a little below 5 down in the valley. So you take one of these storms, it's going to dump, multiple inches of water in a short amount of time, and it's traveling, over couple thousand vertical feet. It makes a recipe for disaster sometimes. So it's a unique situation here, and I think that's why that you see these numbers.
Yeah, that water is deceiving too. And what we teach our folks, and what you teach in all your swift water or the arroyo classes, is water is it's powerful, relentless, and predictable. But it doesn't look like that. It's like, cool, it's ankle deep. I can cross that. But that velocity or that little surface area, that water hitting you, just knocks you over and starts taking you down there. Same thing with the cars. We'll just see that, it's only up to the axles. I can make this. But that water, the change in speed or the change in depth, and you're off just a little bit, is very powerful. And once it gets going, it's relentless and keeps going.
And you mentioned driving vehicles into those. You don't know where the air intake into that engine is and where it's on the vehicle. So it might not be very high up on the car, but as soon as that car sucks water into the engine, it's going to stall out. Now, we have a whole nother problem. So, yeah, I think just people kind of take it for granted and underestimate the power of the water.
Yeah, you don't know until you've experienced it, I think is
That's just something funny. I remember there's one time I'm sitting up there at Wantabo watching the water just go underneath. Guys are doing all the rescues and work down below. This older gentleman comes up to me and starts talking. I'm like, cool, let's talk. And he's been around Albuquerque, born and raised, and in the 60s and 70s when they first installed it. He says, yeah, we used to water ski on this. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And they would tie off to the bridges and they would water ski in the arroyo. And he's like, well, I would never do that today. because then there was very little concrete, very little floodplain for it. Today, there's so much infrastructure from, I think, the 70s, 60s when he used to do this. Yeah. Now he's like, no way, there's too much water in these things. These things are ridiculous and crazy. So things have changed, and our volumes are significant in these arroyos very quickly. Yeah.
Wow.
In the 60s and 70s, whenever it was that he started doing that.
That is an amazing story.
And we're not encouraging
But
anybody.
please don't do that by any means.
But also, could you imagine the news stories of us, getting video of like kids crossing the arroyo to get to their playground? I'm just imagining that, like,
So, yeah, I mean,
it just wouldn't be acceptable today.
No, and reading back about it, the PTA and the mayor was there at the time, and they had to work for 2 years to get a bridge put in over the arroyo at Collette Park. So, I mean, it's as old as time around here, but it's not going away. I'm sure we're going to deal with it, for the time being. I mean, how do you secure hundreds of miles of flood channel system? And it's a complex problem to try to solve. Yeah.
And the arroyos are there for a reason, right? That's something we really haven't talked about. But, I know at one point there was an idea for an arroyo warning system that the city and AMAFCA considered, but it didn't really go anywhere, has never been built at this point. Do you all think that we need an arroyo warning system? Should there be more signage? Is there something else that needs to be done, do you think, to help protect people from flash flooding?
I think that, I don't know, it could almost give you a false sense of security if there was an alerting system or some of the people that might be seeking shelter there. Would it hurt? I don't think so. I don't know if it's going to solve the problem. But I would like to add on that note, if people do see people in encampment in an arroyo or a tunnel, call 311 and absolutely report it. It's probably the best resource we have is people in the city that see some of these things and make those notifications, and hopefully maybe we can prevent somebody from getting caught up. But what do you think?
We've done a lot of improvements to include the warning, the labeling, isolating areas that don't cause that. AMAFCA's built us anchors so that we can do the rescues effectively and safely where we need to. We do the public awareness campaigns every year, and we keep trying to reach out, and it has helped, but there's just a consistent number every year, no matter how much we've tried. And the warning systems, the flow warning systems, the manually ones, ACS going and talking to people at the key entrances where they are as when the warnings come out. We've tried.
Yeah. And there's still just always going to be you can't get everybody, I guess, is maybe the easiest way to say it.
And I'm trying to, every time that we get one of the alerts or the alarm room's putting our flood channel stations on alert, I'm trying to make those posts to social media, but, not everyone's on social media. So we're trying to do what we can, but yeah, it's going to be hard to reach everybody.
Yeah. Well, we really thank you both for joining us for this conversation. Is there anything you'd like to add or touch on that maybe we just didn't ask you about at this point?
I think the one part of this to add on to is the majority of people enter the arroyo within the Albuquerque area, but this is actually an inherently joint operation. So it starts in Albuquerque, but when we dispatch this, Bernalillo County Fire dispatches to multiple locations as well. And so they will support us at El Pueblo and Roy Road for sure. And so we have two of their stations integrating and working with our command structure on this. APD Open Space and Bernalillo County Sheriff's Open Space, they have taken the time to train their officers who are swiftwater trained for the river to come and learn our flood channel. And they've helped us by reinforcing these bottlenecks or going to the point last seen, or if they're hung up on a bridge or something in between, and helping effect those rescues. So we've been able to increase our rescuers through that joint side of it. So it's not just Albuquerque Fire. It originates with us, and we are the command structure for it. We have a lot of support from the rest of the city and the county making that happen.
And it's a good point. And APD has been successful in pulling people out at not some of our normal locations. And then he did mention county, when these turn into recoveries, that usually gets into their jurisdiction, and they'll, handle it from there, and we generally try to cooperate. So yeah, there's a lot of miles of flood channel, and it takes a lot of resources to cover all of it.
Yeah, well, 4 or 5 organizations on the same radio frequency trying to rescue whoever it is that needs that one.
Wow, big team effort. Thank you both for joining us. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank Thanks again to Lieutenant Jason Fair and Lieutenant Justin Spain of Albuquerque Fire Rescue. One question I asked them when we finished the recording that I was curious about is, can all firefighters be dispatched to water rescues? And the answer is yes, they can all be dispatched to the flood channel rescues. These are the concrete arroyos we're talking about, but not necessarily the river rescues. Those require the more specialized training, if you're curious.
Yeah, and a plug for the video version of this, we have some clips of some of the arroyo or flood channel rescue work that AFR has taken, used throughout this episode, which is on YouTube and also Fox New Mexico on 10:35 on Wednesdays, yes. So, and if you have any ideas, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Chris.mckee@krqe.com. That's my email. Also, Chris@ChrisMcKeeTV is how to reach me on social media.
And I'm Gabrielle.Burkhart@krqe.com via email and GBurkNM on social media. Thank you all for listening and watching.